Hello everyone, we're back from the FanStands with another video. This week we've got a guest with us today from another YouTube channel, Keeping Score. Hello Mohammed Ali, and
Hi,
yeah, and
thanks for having me on, guys.
yes, thank you for coming on with us. And we would like to see your views on this video as well. And also with us today, as always, it's Dayan and Mohsin. So let's get started with the video. First, I think first rule of business that we need to discuss is the big news: Newcastle takeover by the Saudis. So let's start with Mohsin first. So Mohsin, what do you think of the takeover that is due to take place?
Well, Hassan, big news coming in from England this week. I mean, the speculation has been on and off since last year. It just started last year in May 2019, and we've been hearing of a possible takeover by a wealthy owner from the Gulf countries for Newcastle United. And the fans were determined that they wanted to see the back of Mike Ashley from the club because in the last 13 years, he was unable to make very good investments for the club. I mean, whether it's regarding the stadium improvements or buying in new players. So it's and he wasn't supporting managers in charge. I mean, the famous case of Rafa Benitez. So it's a very welcome move by the fans, but we might have an issue because of the if you see the background of the new owners coming in. So there might be some hindrance in that, but I believe it will all be cleared by when this finally comes to an end.
So Mohammed Ali, what's your take on it?
On the impending takeover,
Yes.
I'll be honest, I'm shit scared as a fellow Premier League supporter because I think that sheer financial capabilities of the proposed new owners of Newcastle is insane. They have the ability to probably buy out the top four clubs combined if they want to. And when you have money like that and reckless abandon the way that we know that their owners do have, the limits are basically endless. And there's so many players in the market right now, especially after COVID, that might have strong financial incentives behind choosing their next club. And obviously, Newcastle right now will be the go-to project. So I think for the rest of the Premier League, I think there's a lot of bad news based on this ownership, and also probably like the only saving grace they might have is that with the FFP regulations in place, it might be difficult for Newcastle to now pull off what perhaps Manchester City or Chelsea did in the past. That's what I'm clinging to at least in terms of hope.
And they are talking about their owners. Recently, a couple of letters have been, sent to the EPL and to the UK government, trying to stop this takeover. One by the Amnesty International because of the background of the Saudi Crown Prince, and secondly by the Newscasters Association to stop this takeover because the owners also run a channel that illegally showed EPL for 3 years in the Middle East region, and now they're becoming, and the EPL has filed cases on them, and one of the team is now being going to be owned by them. So what do you think on that?
But I think it's more of a geopolitical issue that's being translated into business espionage or possibly jeopardizing a particular deal per se that's potentially about to happen. As in, we can't be sure of anything till they state any facts. People putting up allegations. A lot of allegations have been put on a lot of different parties in the past. But again, that doesn't really mean anything till they don't take them to court or they particularly don't present any kind of fact figures about it. So till then, I don't see anything jeopardizing this particular deal, and I feel like Newcastle is one of those clubs. It's a very prestigious club, and it's got a dense legacy in the past as well. So I feel like such a club obviously is looking for, has the same hunger. The fans have the hunger. They want to come back into becoming a huge club, and they will definitely come back to becoming a huge club. And if it's the Saudis that are possibly gonna take them to that particular position, then be it. They'd welcome them with arms wide open.
Okay, one more thing, there in the past few months there were things going on between the Ed Woodward and meeting the Saudis and every. So what happened there?
Ed
Any?
Woodward meeting the Saudis. Okay, so particularly if you look at the Saudis and the economy of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, actually, we're going to be digressing a bit from possibly football and going into the world of economics. They've been because of the recent changes in global economics as well. They've been really trying to diversify, their economy in terms of what the economy is dependent upon. If you look at the GCC countries, there's a stereotype now that's been created, and that stereotype is backed by facts that Saudis and the GCC region was all about oil drilling and pumping of oil into the global markets. But in recent times, obviously, you look at Iran, you look at the UAE, the Emirati region, or you look at Qatar. You look at all of these places, and they've diversified in a lot of ways, and to diversify their
Yeah,
economy as
but
well as
Dayan,
a
my
whole, and
question
what
was
they've built
not
to the
about
global economy.
diversification. Dayan, but
Nahin,
my
but
question is that as a Manchester United fan, would you want
एक मिनट,
that
let me
money
complete
coming
it.
into Manchester United, or would
नहीं,
you want
नहीं,
that
that
money like money
let
going
me
to another
let
club?
me
That's my
let me
question.
Basically,
recall
if I can translate
let,
your question,
Yeah,
are
let me
you
recall your
Basha's
question.
Ayan that
Uh,
they've chosen Newcastle over your club?
yeah, that's my
Uh,
question.
because obviously they're gonna choose. If that's your question, then be a little more upfront about it. But my point is that if if particularly United isn't letting them in, it's very clear because the American group that backs United at the moment, they don't value United very lightly. It's one of the basic main assets in their particular portfolio. So I don't feel like if they're looking at Newcastle is a big name that they'll get for a far more cheaper rate than possibly Manchester United. Even if you look at Manchester City wasn't a big club before the Qataris took over, was it? So the Qataris took over a cheap club, and they actually rejuvenated the whole club into becoming a very pricey club. In
Yeah,
fact, so
so
that's
do
and
you think
particularly
the
the case
same
that
thing
they're
could
trying to make
happen
there.
again at Newcastle? Would you guys, Mohsen, would you guys?
As an Asan, you're an accountant by profession. What do you think money can do?
Yeah, money can do
to
anything.
be honest, right,
Yeah,
Tayan, I don't think United fans will be too worried because it's not like they don't have money to spend. And there's only so
exactly,
much worth that you can attach to a player. So
Yeah.
any player Newcastle can afford, unfortunately, United can do the same. But I think from
exactly.
the Qataris' perspective, they've been much smarter to pick Newcastle over United because A, United would have been obviously like probably
Not the
6 10
Qataris, the
points.
Saudis, by the way.
The Saudis,
Uh,
yeah,
Saudis
sorry, the Saudis.
and the Emirates owns Man City, not the Qataris.
My apologies. The
sorry,
Saudis
sorry.
and
Yes, we mixed up the whole
and
thing. Sorry.
from their
Yeah.
perspective, my bad. From their perspective, they're getting a club that is the only club in a very big city with a huge
Hmm.
fan following, with a good history as well. And also, they have a lot of people living in that city, so they have an abundance of youth potential
Hmm.
as well to build from. So they have all of the boxes that you ideally look for in a club. Other than obviously
Hmm.
Champions League football, but then
I understand.
Anything to
Uh,
add,
uh,
Mohsen?
uh, yeah, Hassan. The thing is, if you see Newcastle, I mean, they already have a big stadium, and it's always full. I mean, they don't have fan issues like we still hear about Manchester City being unable to get a full stadium, even on very big nights and Champions League matches. So Newcastle doesn't have that problem despite lack of success, getting relegated, playing in the Championship. So they have a very strong and loyal fan base.
Definitely.
And this is a very good opportunity for the Saudis to, they're strongly investing in football recently. If I've done some research on this. Sheffield United as well as Hull City, they have Saudi-backed shares in the club. So that has helped them invest, and that is why they become better sides they're playing the Premier League now because they haven't spent obviously on a large scale, but they
Hmm.
have somewhat money to spend and buy good players which fit the squad. So I think Newcastle will be going along the same lines with the FFP regulations coming in. We won't see Newcastle buying instant success. It'll take them time. It might take them 4 years, 5 years, 6 years to become a top four club.
Okay.
It's
I
definitely going to take a lot of time for them because even if you look at Manchester City's case,
Hmm.
So I
that
think
there are a
maybe
lot of
3 or 4 years.
sponsors there were a lot of sponsors that they were trying to onboard that had been blocked by the FA as well because of the
Hmm.
financial fair play rules. So my point is, again, I back what Mohsen said, that they're not buying instant success, but as far as what they can do with the club and how how big of an improvement can we see in the club because of this change in ownership, sky's the limit to that.
Yeah.
But I also had a question for you guys. I mean, post-COVID now, it's difficult the way that it's going to be. Most clubs have lost their buying power. So, like Real Madrid and Barcelona, for example, would have been prime targets for the likes of Neymar and Mbappe to move. But those teams can't afford probably to buy players that caliber anymore, at least without a lot of difficulty. Whereas the selling clubs, perhaps not PSG in this case, but for a lot of talent that is widely acclaimed, the selling clubs will probably be very happy to get them off their books if they can spend it. They can find someone to spend a lot of money. And Newcastle will now have the luxury to pay that extra 30, 40 million that in the COVID era, a lot of teams with ball can't do it.
Yeah, but
so don't you think that this is perhaps the perfect time for Newcastle?
Yeah, it may be a perfect time, but the problem is, as we already mentioned, the financial fair play rules will come into place, as well as sensitivity to the actual issue and the whole economy would also come in place. Paying somebody 100 million on one side, and on the other side you don't have enough salaries to pay your non-support staff. You're putting them on furlough on one side and paying 100 million on the other side.
That's not what the Saudis are.
It won't go down.
We don't know if that's going to be the case with the Saudis, though.
But Mohammad Ali, the thing is with some players, I mean, they wouldn't want to just push a move to Newcastle unless they're being forced by the current club. For example, Neymar. I mean, he's already being tainted for being a sellout, leaving Barcelona for the sake of cash to join PSG. If he does that again, fans will just throw a banter that he's joining Newcastle for money.
It also shows that he has precedent to make moves for financial basis. So
Newcastle can't even offer you Champions League football, but that has to be seen what happens with that competition. That's a different topic, but still, I mean, you wouldn't want to just join Newcastle right now. The takeover hasn't been finalized yet, and you don't even know who's in charge of the board, and it's going to take some time for them to.
Or even who's going to be a manager or something.
Even the managers are undecided.
At the end of the day, there's another dilemma that these clubs are in as well. Sorry, I cut you in between, but there's another dilemma that these clubs would be in is that yes, these players at the end of the day, they're also their assets and the assets that earn them that money as well. If you look at it from a business perspective, I don't see. Yes, I may see them causing a lot of cash flow issues to the clubs, but at the end of the day, I don't see clubs just thinking on liquidating players to the likes of Neymar either. Plus, when you're talking about players moving away as well, rightfully, as Mohsen rightfully pointed out, that it's also down to the players that if the player wants to go or not. And no club can forcefully make a player move to another club, and with the player not having a say in it at all. So my point is, it's a joint consensus that we're talking about. We're talking about a two-way party, and when you're talking about players to the likes of Neymar, where does Newcastle stand right now? Where would Neymar be playing, considering Neymar's age? Where would Neymar be playing next season or the season after that?
To be honest, I think you're right. It's not very realistic to talk about guys like Neymar. But if I'm thinking about guys like Felipe Coutinho, for example, who are going to be on the market, Mauro Icardi is going to be available. Cavani doesn't have a club in the summer. He could be available for free. So from an FFP perspective as well. So there are certain players that are, between clubs that they could target that could still really improve their side.
Yeah, Mohammad Ali, we can go, till the things are finalized and, the transfer market actually becomes a thing again, because, right now we're all in a loop or something that, whether the clubs are going to restart the match or the league's going to end or something. So till that comes around, it's all just speculation and everything. So I think let's move on from this topic right now, because we basically have stated to talk about coronavirus and its impact in a different video with Dayan and ourselves. So we'll cover that in a different video directly.
And you, if you want to be there.
Yeah, of course.
So even if you decide that you've had enough of me today, I will definitely encourage everybody to watch.
Yeah, move your camera because we can't see your face.
The lights coming in. The
thing is, that's actually better for the audience.
Mohammad Ali, I'd like to Mohammad Ali, I want to just, I'd like you to answer. I mean, I remember when Chelsea was purchased by Abramovich, as well as when the Sheikhs came over and purchased Manchester City. These are the kind of talks we always hear that Kaka was moving to Manchester City. That didn't suffice. Then we heard Ronaldinho Eto'o coming to Chelsea. I mean, these kind of rumors do come in. Yes, I think the Neymar example was a bit, I should have given a better example. But yes, when it comes to cases of Icardi as well as Coutinho, it is a possibility. But then again, Coutinho is looking for Champions League and he's looking to move to London. I don't think it's Newcastle is on his mind right now, but anything can happen. But a lot of speculations do come in when a new billionaire owner buys a club. And often what happens is a lot of players do not end up making that move.
Definitely.
I
You
think
know,
you raised
for
a sorry, if I may. I think you raised a very good point about Manchester City and Chelsea, and there's a couple of themes there that you can sort of look at as well. But before that, like quickly talking about Coutinho, I think Coutinho's situation is a bit interesting because I don't know whether Arsenal, Chelsea, Tottenham will have the kind of buying power to pay what Coutinho would probably be worth given his situation. But on the putting that to the side, you look at Chelsea and Manchester City, and there's a theme. You're absolutely right. They were linked to the biggest players in the world, but initially they weren't able to attract that kind of talent. So instead, they went for guys that were up and comers. So, for example, Manchester City picked up David Silva from Valencia. He was not like world acclaimed then. He picked up Sergio Aguero when he was at Atletico Madrid. He was wanted by everyone, but at that point in time, he was not, crazy.
Where he is right now.
And Robinho was kind of the way that Coutinho is now. Like he was a big name, but he's
His signing was a joke. His signing was a joke. He thought he was.
To be fair, yeah, and it was compounded by the fact that he said the wrong name of the club as well when he was signing. So that and Chelsea was the same. To be fair, I mean a lot of people hadn't heard of Drogba. SCN was an unknown quantity. Robin, I think, came a little bit before the takeover, but like we didn't actually sign a lot of very, very big established names. You're right, like Ronaldinho or Kaká, those kinds of players. At least not till much later till Ballack and Shevchenko came.
But I also feel that whenever a new ownership comes in, it's more of a developmental process than an instant buying instant success for the perfectly. And I feel like but for the sake of speaking, I feel like if this does goes through, then at the moment I usually talk to people and I tell them that if Mourinho fails at Tottenham this time around, he can probably forget elite football. But if these people come into the ownership change does take place in Newcastle,
stop sucking Mourinho.
No, but there was news that I know it's not concrete, but there were rumors that Mourinho was ready to come to Newcastle if the Arab owners were coming in. I mean, this is very old news.
Yeah, but I think Rafa Benitez is the favorite to come back to Newcastle. Right?
No, Allegri is also linked. Pochettino's also linked.
Yeah. All right. I think we've discussed Newcastle for a long time, and we can keep discussing. But time is of the essence, so we have to move on.
I have actually a Newcastle fan friend who will probably be orgasming at the sight of all of this talk.
You're talking about Newcastle. We're talking about Newcastle.
Well, Hassan, they already have a Newcastle Pakistan's fan page by now. I've seen it. I've seen it on Facebook.
No, but the poor guy used to watch Newcastle matches when they got relegated. Used to stream them off an Eagle site. I don't know if I should be saying this.
That's such a hard one, I swear.
And now,
the same almost happened to Chelsea, by the way.
Well, then we sacked Mourinho.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on. Talking about